We have a snake on top of a gator.
Throughout the Gulf and Atlantic South, hurricane parties are a staple of hurricane season. And when it comes to hurricanes, the ability to be vulnerable and emerge unscathed is an immense privilege. There are a growing number of people who, for a variety of reasons, are simply unable to evacuate. Sometimes there is no evacuation order. Not everyone in the path will experience a direct hit. Many people stay in place when a direct hit is not expected because businesses close down to reduce liability, they're not going to work, and they don't have anywhere to shop. So, in case the storm turns unexpectedly, everybody tends to hunker down whether or not the hurricane's coming directly at them. The New Orleans Journal surveyed residents before Hurricane Isidore in 2002, and the last respondent said, "My grandfather loved hurricanes. He invited everyone he knew to their home. He threw big parties where they cheered behind plywood-covered windows, and his grandfather would say to the guests, 'Enjoy the wind, enjoy the wind.'" And in 2012, the Miami New Times kicked off that year's hurricane season writing, "Frankly, there's no better time to booze it up and bond with friends than during a disaster when no one has to work and the internet is down." No one's really sure when hurricane parties started in Florida, but the tradition likely evolved gradually over time in response to the recurring threat of hurricanes in the region. However, the practice of gathering together with friends and family during storms has historical roots that date back to the early days of Florida settlements. Settlers in Florida faced the dangers of hurricanes, and they often sought refuge together in their sturdiest buildings or communal shelters, and they shared resources and support during those times. So this communal spirit and the resilience probably laid the foundation for what we call hurricane parties. And it's not just a 21st century phenomenon. People were doing it even before World War II, when hurricane-resistant infrastructure and different meteorological advances allowed for more accurate storm predictions. And back then, there weren't modern interstate systems, so a lot of people just had to stay in place, because how are they going to really quickly and effectively evacuate? By this point, hurricane parties have pretty much become ingrained in Florida's culture. They're now a very well-established aspect of life in the state, and this is especially true for those who've experienced numerous hurricanes and tropical storms over the years. Historically, people from all walks of life have taken part in these hurricane parties, and the locations can be in cafes and bars, on military bases, oil rigs, and even in dorm rooms. In 1981, Lionel Mitchell was reporting for the New York Amsterdam News. It was one of the oldest African-American newspapers in the US, and he was reminiscing about his experience at a 1962 hurricane party. He said it was the first time students, liberals, faculty, couples, bohemians, musicians, creative people could just get together under the cover of 100-mile-an-hour winds on an interracial basis with no fear of police raids or reprisals of any sort. There's obviously something about that vulnerability that creates an opportunity to just be human together. And I think that's why hurricane parties have become somewhat of a tradition in Florida, especially for residents who are just used to them by now. Even in Texas, it's said that hurricane parties are meant to ease the stress. You know, you invite your friends and your family to your boarded up or your shuttered home, and they just provide a little blip of joy amid all the anxiety and chaos and sometimes hopelessness that a crisis like a hurricane can bring. So even though hurricane parties can get a bad rap, I think that the community resilience is pretty obvious. You know, people knowing that there's a potentially catastrophic storm bearing down on them, coming together and just finding solace in each other's company is pretty special. And I think that people are just kind of used to doing them at this point. There's a historical precedent for it. And across a lot of these states in the Gulf Coast region, people do live in homes that are not necessarily the strongest. And so hurricane parties provide an opportunity for everyone to go to the safest place, just like they did back in the day. We've adapted to the risk of being in hurricane-prone regions by connecting in this way. And really, I think one of the most fun parts about the hurricane party is after the storm passes, where you kind of just get to celebrate that you survived and that everything's fine, and maybe you just got a few lawn chairs blown over. Every hurricane presents that one chance that something might go wrong. So being able to kind of gather together, and if there is damage, maybe work together and just lend support is something that is a little bit easier when you're already all together. So while hurricane parties might seem lighthearted on the surface, I do think they're rooted in the shared experiences and challenges of living in a hurricane-prone state like Florida and some of the other areas along the Gulf Coast that tend to get hit and deal with really awful flooding. They really serve as a reminder of the strength and resilience of the human spirit in the face of nature's fury. This is why I really urge you to bring back hurricane cakes. Yes, this is what this video is about. Publix, listen up. There has been a tradition of ordering hurricane cakes that probably emerged in like the 90s or maybe the early 2000s. And whenever you had a hurricane party, you know, according to some people a few years ago, you had hurricane cakes. I heard about it. I saw all the cakes that had like hurricanes drawn on them. Okay. And I understand that maybe people don't like the idea of hurricane parties. So why would anyone want to have a hurricane cake? But you can't have cake without a party. You can't have party without a cake. That's what makes the cake a party and the party a cake. You just don't get it. Okay. I don't know what's happening nowadays, but hurricane cakes, they had the themes, you know, it was like the frosting was swirled and you'd be like, oh, that's a hurricane right there. You see that white in the blue? Boom, hurricane. Maybe there was like some palm trees and the beaches and then like the wind would be there and you're like, oh, snap. Okay. Hurricane's hitting the shore, you know? And it was just like, yeah, man, I really loved the idea of hurricane cakes. And I was disappointed when I found out about it and then immediately found out they had taken them away. Okay, I want to be real with you guys. This was a whole fake thing. I don't know if anybody else in the state of Florida has ever had a hurricane cake at their hurricane party, but I never did. And I remember hearing about this a few years ago. And I was like, Publix? Okay, now I have to kind of explain Publix to you. Publix is, probably you've heard of it at this point, right? The pub sub. Okay. Publix is the greatest grocery store on the planet. Okay. Maybe that's not true, but Publix is a really awesome company based out of Lakeland, Florida that has now spread all over the Southeast region. And truthfully, I have lived outside of this area where there aren't Publixes, and there really is a marked difference in the service that you receive. And one of the things about the Publix brand is the bakery, the deli. They have some really, really solid brand foods, and their cakes are tremendous. Once you've had a Publix cake, you don't want to eat cakes anywhere else. There's actually a lot of items that they have that will kind of ruin you. There's a reason why Subway just doesn't do as well as it could if there's a Publix nearby. So when I first found out about this, I think that my natural love for Publix made me very upset that Publix would ever tell me no, because Publix is where shopping is a pleasure and everybody's just very nice. In fact, if I ever go to a Publix, rarely, if it's ever happened, maybe once or twice, where people are not nice, I'm offended. If I go to a Winn-Dixie or any other store, I don't care if they're nice to me or not. I don't expect it. But Publix, how dare you? And so when I found out that Publix was taking away hurricane cakes, my immediate reaction was like, oh my gosh, let them make their cakes. And then I found out that that I was not the only one who did not buy hurricane cakes, that nobody made hurricane cakes. And I guess there was like maybe a couple of people who had posted on social media about hurricane cakes and they got rid of them. But I just wanted to share with you guys that hurricane parties are not something that people should be judged for. Okay. Hurricane parties, again, one of the most important things that a lot of people don't know about hurricanes is that not everybody gets that evacuation notice. Not everybody is meant to leave. And in Florida, sometimes during hurricane season, we just deal with a lot of thunderstorms and tropical storms, tropical depressions that come through. And for us, we're a little bit more used to the rain. In fact, we kind of know the areas that are flood prone in our area. Like if anybody's from the Tampa Bay area, you kind of know South Tampa is going to flood, period. It just is what it is. And that's not during hurricanes. That's just when it rains. So if a hurricane comes, we kind of know to be ready that area is going to flood. Most other areas outside of Florida, when they get hit with a hurricane, the flooding they experience, it's so much more severe usually because they just don't know, especially if they've never been hit like that and been inundated with water before. And so I understand that outside of Florida, the Wild West somehow, I guess it'd be the wild Southeast of the United States, where we're all Florida men and Florida women. Outside of this place, it can seem really strange that anyone would throw a party. But around here, a hurricane coming through, for most of us, usually just means work is going to be closed. You might lose power, maybe, and you're not going to be able to leave because there might be a flood 15, 20 miles away in one little area, one little stretch of road. But usually once the storm is gone, most of us are good. So I just want to reassure you that if you have been worried about hurricanes hitting Florida and people throwing parties and intentionally putting themselves in danger, that's really not what's happening. And if it is what's happening, you have to ask yourself, why would someone do that? And in many cases, people who look like they're just being stubborn really just don't have anywhere else to go. They don't have the money. Hurricanes come out of nowhere, even if it's 2 weeks. Some people don't have enough money to pack up their stuff, leave work, evacuate for the hurricane, go somewhere where the hurricane isn't going, which by the way, happened to a lot of people. I think it was with Irma, where a lot of people were told to evacuate, that Florida was going to take a direct hit. And I think it still did hit us, but it actually did more damage north of us where where everyone evacuated to, and the interstates were insane. I can't remember if that's the right one. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, comment below. I just want you to understand some people cannot afford to evacuate, but most Floridians do not have to. It's usually a very small area. Yeah, that area might have thousands of residents and it might sound like a big number. We're told to evacuate, but Florida has millions of people. So when they say thousands of people were meant to evacuate a beachside town, again, they're not talking about all of us. The last thing I'll add as I close this video out is that Florida has a law where our media is open to the public. So the reason you always hear Florida man stories is not because Florida has that much more going on. It's because we have an open media and Florida man became a popular thing and now it still is. I get all kinds of insights and news from all over the United States about how crazy the rest of you guys are. So please stop assuming that every freaking Florida man goes in and tries to ride the waves and does dumb stuff during hurricanes. We only do that for the first couple hours when the storm is coming in, and then we go back to our house and we get drunk. So relax, okay? Gosh. Maybe you should like this video. Maybe you should subscribe to this video and to this channel and to me and be my friend. And maybe you should leave a comment down there down there. Deeper, Johnny, deeper.